Todd,
when you come back from Lakewood,
we're going to call February 6th Finance Committee to order. Roll call, Madam Chairman. I think everybody's here other than Benny Johnson's at work. Ms. Terry Casso is absent, and Travis is also absent. We're going to have Randy's going to lead us off in the prayer, and followed by the pledge.
Would everyone please stand? In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we ask that you look upon everyone as we go through this flu epidemic, and we hope that you look upon everyone and keep them healthy. And Lord, it's with deep heart that we ask for special prayers for the Sanchez family, for the loss of one of our own, DPW worker, Aaron Sanchez. We ask that you keep them close and take them through this time with your loving grace. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Blewart. Chair's edition, the only thing we have, they got a NACO convention coming up in March, so the next finance and drainage meeting, we're going to move to March 26th. February 26th. February 26th.
Somewhere around there.
Any objection with that, with the board committee? We'll just move, put it on the chair's edition. We'll move forward with that. Madam Secretary, if you could make them changes and get that out to party that's interested in it. We're going to move on to public comment. Anyone want to speak on an agenda item, please sign in. You have 3 minutes to speak. Number 5, flood update. Updates on projects and FEMA reimbursements. Mr. Rick Weber. Glad to have you, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You've got a memorandum for record from my office in front of you. The order brief will be me. I'll give you some of the management challenges that we've had over the last 90 days. Michelle Rayborn will brief you on the temporary categories of work, and then Eric DeRoche will brief you on our permanent categories of work. The first item that you see on that memorandum is Arthur Scheck-Snyder Trucking. That was an older contract that was written several years ago. It was never renewed, and it was not in accordance with the Code of Federal Regulations. So we had to do a cost reasonableness study on this one particular contract, and we did that. We used the FEMA schedule of equipment rate, and we submitted that to FEMA, so that's in line to get reimbursed for that one also. The second one is Lofton Services. We also had to do a cost reasonableness study on that. We had to make sure that the rate that we paid to Lofton was aligned with what we would normally pay wage rates here in Louisiana, within a range, not too high, not too low. We use the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, and we use our own pay scales, so that came out well. The recommendation that we've made to the administration that if we think that we're going to use any of these contracts under a declared emergency, just please put them in the form that the Code of Federal Regulations require, so that we can use them, so we don't have a delay when we're moving forward and submitting for FEMA public assistance. Another issue that we had was Ascension Parish government equipment list. Several years ago, we had an Excel spreadsheet for every piece of equipment that we had in parish government, and next to that piece of equipment, it had the FEMA equipment code from the schedule of equipment rates, and that's what we submit to FEMA to get paid by the hour for the equipment that we use. Over the years, it kind of went by the wayside. We've got a new database called Fleet Management Pro, and we had to go line by line with DPW to update that database, and that's been done. So now we can submit all the line items to FEMA. We can get paid by the hour for all the equipment that we use, but it did create a delay, an administrative delay trying to get that done. Next item is the parish auction, and we've already briefed the administration on this. It's about a $200,000 project. We can get $200,000 for the vehicles that were flooded, that were parish owned. The issue that we're facing is that we have to have a public auction in order to do that, to determine the salvage value of these vehicles. So that project is on hold until we get that done. We've made the administration aware of it, and we need to declare them surplus and have an auction to get that project moving forward. The next one was FEMA versus the GOSEP Recovery Division. The instruction that I gave to my staff was to write these projects in emergency management operations, their functions. So in other words, I want you to write a project for sheltering operations. I want you to write a project for flood control operations. That way I can tie back any issues that we have with it. So if this worked well, we're going to do that in the future. If it didn't, we're going to change. The problem is when FEMA threw it over the fence to the GOSEP Recovery Division for reimbursement. They want it by vendor, not by operation. And then when I realized Michelle was doing that, I told her to stop. Let me contact GOSEP, because it's not our job to make GOSEP's job easier. So I called Casey Tingle and I called Lynn Browning, and we came up with a hybrid version of the way that we're going to submit it. So we're moving forward now, we're getting it submitted, but it was very time consuming to disassemble everything that we've done to resubmit it for reimbursement. And then the last one was future flood property and casualty insurance. If you look at that statement that you have in there, that's on every project worksheet that I sign for every building that we're getting reimbursed for. So we have to assign this statement stating that we're going to purchase and maintain insurance moving forward. So we talked to our agent, Harry Robert, and he came up with a spreadsheet. And what we did, we went back across 20 years and said, what would it cost us if we paid the premiums across 20 years? And it still came back to a positive return on investment. In other words, if we'd had insurance on these buildings over the last 20 years, it would have came out ahead. So what my recommendation to the administration is let us do an assessment on this and then come back to you and the council to make a decision. Just do a decision paper on how we should carry this insurance moving forward, especially on the buildings that are located within a flood zone. So that was the major challenges that we've had over the last 60 to 90 days. What I want to do is call up Michelle Rayborn and have a brief view on the temporary categories of work. Michelle?
Secretary, let it be known that Mr. Travis Turner made. Thank you.
Good evening. The categories that I worked on were Category A and Category B. A was debris removal. Page 3 actually gives you a breakdown. We had 5 PWs that we wrote, and 2 of them have already been paid. Those were the ones that were done by Tetra Tech, who did the monitoring, and DRC, who did all the debris, most of the debris removal. PW 807 and 808 have still not been paid, and mostly it's for the reasons that Rick just described. There were some issues with the contract from Lofton, Arthur Scheck-Snyder. So we've submitted all that documentation, and we're just waiting for feedback from them if they need anything further. So those should not be held up too much longer for payment. So that's 807 and 808. 971 was the one that we had to go back and do we used force account equipment, force account labor, and we also brought DRC back to do some of the piles that were sitting there forever and ever. So that one was just recently submitted. It's in the queue. They're working through it. So again, I don't foresee any problems with that one, but it should be paid in a decent amount of time. Category B is emergency protective measures. That one, the total amount is $4.5 million. We have submitted one of the larger ones, which was the pumping stations. That was $1.85 million. They may come back and ask for some backup documentation, and we're just waiting for the queue. I know we've had something from the March flood, and they're just looking for a little more documentation to back up what they've done in the past. One of the smaller ones was the sandbagging machines. That was $34,000. So the ones that are still remaining are, well, the total of what still needs to be submitted is about $2.5 million. That's the force account labor, force account equipment, force account materials, and the contracts. There are multiple reimbursement requests that are going to be submitted. I can tell you over 18 months, I've learned some lessons, like how to submit it, what do they want, what's the best practices to use. So those are being implemented now. And what speeds that along is if you write reimbursement requests for single things, they can break those down and pay those, and goes up a lot quicker than if you put the whole package together and you have an issue, then you have to wait for the whole thing to be resolved before they pay the whole thing. So about half of that still needs to be submitted. and those should be worked through probably within the next week. So all of the PWs for category A and B are pretty close to wrapped up. Any questions?
I got a question.
Mr. Randy Kluwak?
Yes, ma'am. Real quick, I know how cumbersome that is, so, and dealing with an agency and get thrown to another agency, so you gotta rewrite everything you did. Quick question for everybody is Arthur Shakespeare Trucking, is he paid, or is he waiting on this to get cleared up?
No, all the payments have been made.
Okay.
We're just waiting for reimbursement for the work that was done.
Okay, and the same with Lofton and anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is GOSEP working with you guys good or what?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a process that you have so many different steps, so many different cues that the process has to go through. And like Rick was explaining, you submit it to FEMA, FEMA obligates it. It just takes for a long time. And then it goes to GOSEP. They upload those documents, and then I have to resubmit everything that has already been put in GOSEP's system, which is LAPA. Again, I have to take everything and sort it and upload it separately again for them to be able to review the records that FEMA has already approved. Right. So it's just a time-consuming process.
And we all know that. Anybody?
But I feel like it's moving pretty smooth.
Any more questions on this side? Parish President.
About a week ago, we had a conference call with Garrett Graves. If you look at this disallowed road damage we had from the floods, I mean, Rick has tried. They tell you to do one thing. In March, he cored the roads, and then they disallowed that. And then in the next flood, we used Tetra Tech's the most latest thing, and we did all that. They disallowed that. But we had a conference call with Garrett Graves, and we asked him, should we stop? He said no. They still fighting for it. So we don't know any changes to that, but right now they disallowed $5.4 million on roads.
And that's what Eric will
Yeah.
be discussing in just a moment.
Okay. Any more questions?
I got another question.
Mr. Kluwak.
Real quick, I guess Rick knows, one of my biggest things is the building projects. And I know you have been fighting hard on those, so appreciate anything you can do on those.
Eric will go over that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Eric?
Good evening. To elaborate a little bit with what President Matassa said, yes, the roads were scientific methods. What he talked about is the FWD, falling weight deflectometer. That was disallowed, which was $5.4 million. But we were successful in 3 road segments that we did submit for roads under the traditional FEMA recognized road program. And one of them was for Bayou Terrace for the washout that took place for $19,360. And the other one was for the section of Alligator Bayou Road that was taken out when they removed the levee for the dewatering. So we got $26,000 to put that road back. That's the only monies that we did receive from FEMA that's been approved for roads. And as far as the buildings, I'm going to take each building that we have damaged and give you a good generalized recap. One thing to note that FEMA has implemented up to a $500,000 penalty for flooded buildings because we don't have flood insurance. We do have excess flood insurance as we reported previously, but the initial NFIP, which everyone's accustomed to, we do not have that insurance. And that's one of the things that Rick just mentioned that we're going to have to look and evaluate. We met with Mr. Harry and administration, and we will be coming forward with a recommendation. But that cap is based off of the value of the building. So if that building is only worth, say, $250,000, then that cap would only be $250,000, not the $500,000. And the reason why we're saying $500,000 is because that is the maximum that's allowable that you can purchase through NFIP for a commercial structure. Each structure is different values, so therefore your maximum is different for each structure. For the mosquito control, as reported back previously, we did get monies back from FEMA of $29,000 just recently. They made an adjustment. We got another $1,600 or so, so we got a total of $31,000. Fire Station 50, that's completely been repaired, and that station, between FEMA and their insurance, they were made whole. We got $2,100 in direct administrative costs for that station. Fire Station 60 on Stringer Bridge, between the insurance estimate, FEMA's estimate, there was a gap of approximately $90,000, which FEMA is going to give us an additional $90,000 for that damage repair estimates that they came about for Fire Station 60. On Fire Station 62, between the insurance and also FEMA, we've been made whole. That building has been repaired and back in service. Fire Station 61, that FEMA has recognized that building as being what they call 50% rule, in our terms substantially damaged, but FEMA has awarded a PW. Currently it is unobligated, but we do have a PW awarded and signed and agreed upon. They max it out at the value of that structure, which was $375,000. The Santa Mar Park office trailer, we have an awarded PW, and with the damage estimates of roughly $52,000, we just got the monies. We just matter of going through the rest of the paperwork on it. On the Santa Mar Recreation Building, Mr. Clute, I know that's of particular interest to you. FEMA came back to us and made a recommendation to look at doing mitigation dollars. Since then, we've had a meeting with FEMA and the mitigation folks, along with the parish and Myers Engineering, who was selected through the RFP process for reconstruction of that building. We're getting data, we're collecting data, we got some preliminary numbers, and then we will be meeting with FEMA to see if that is exactly what they're looking for before we make our formal submission. So we are moving forward looking at what mitigation dollars that we may be able to get to put towards the repairs of that building. So we've still got a lot more work to go, and we'll keep you abreast of where we're going with that down the road. PJ's Landing is still waiting on a PW to be awarded. It's going through the FEMA queues. On that River Region Cancer Center, that is also still, we do not have a PW, still going through the FEMA queues. On both of those buildings, we will have a penalty for not having flood insurance. We don't know exactly what that value will be. As mentioned with the equipment that Rick mentioned earlier, we're waiting on the auction so we can move forward with that. And then also in the Santa Mar Park, the gravel walking trail on the other side of the canal and the perimeter fencing, there was damage. We've received PW, and we actually received the monies of $33,000 to repair those. So, and the switching gear was done previously and a previous update. So that's where we stand on all of our permanent structures, and we're continuing chugging away with it and moving forward. So with that, I'll answer any questions y'all may have before Rick comes in and closes out.
Any questions for Mr. Eric? Appreciate it, Eric.
Thank you.
Mr. Rick?
So the two decision papers that's going to come out of this, one is going to be for the insurance coverage, and then one will be for how the parish and the council wants to manage repair of these buildings moving forward. So we'll develop that. The frustration comes is having to wait for all this funding to get through the FEMA queues, so you know what money you have to spend at the end. If you look at that chart that we put in here, we're still online, if everything else gets paid for Category B, for about a $1.3 million windfall for doing that. Now, how do you want to spend it? You know, that'll be in a decision paper, but insurance and how do you want to move forward with construction will be the critical thing that we need to decide within the next 60 to 90 days.
Gotcha.
You know, other than your question, this concludes the briefing.
Any questions from Mr. Bill Dawson?
Thank you, Rick. It may be I'm off subject here, but how about the hazard mitigation? Can you, or do we need to talk to Martha about that?
Yeah, you probably best to talk to Martha. I hadn't really engaged with that hazard mitigation lately. The mitigation that we have dealt with was FEMA 406 mitigation, which is a different source of funding than what Martha usually deals with. Actually, the architects are doing some work for PJ's Landing and Santa Mar Park to see if we can use 406 mitigation funding to apply to any of those repairs. So that's another thing that has to get through these queues before we make a decision. But that is a different source of funding.
Now, where can I find out about these FEMA trailers? That's a joke. This is going on is a joke.
I can contact our representative from GOSEP, and we can go to the recovery division in Baton Rouge if you need to talk to anybody from FEMA. You mean as far as applying the?
Well, I
right
mean,
to-
I have people, number one, you know, you got this little trailer, they want to charge them over $1,000 a month for
Yeah.
something sitting on their own property. Then you can't find out what the price is for somebody to buy it. So we have people that have not been able to build their house. And I guess, what are we gonna do? We're gonna kick them out on May 15th? Or who's gonna go there and evict these people out of these trailers?
I looked at some previous areas like that from previous incidents, and that's what FEMA says, you know, but what actually happens is usually not the case. If you put enough political horsepower on them, they'll begin to back off. And I think that's kind of what we need to do. I don't think they're gonna yank anybody out of the trailer anytime soon, but that's what they're threatening to do, so they want to open their eyes. I agree with you. You know, I don't think that we should be charging them rent for after they just went through a disaster, because that's what these things are here for. But what their objective is they want to move these trailers to other areas that's been hit in the country, like Texas. So they need them there too. So they're trying to manage their resources, but doing it this way is not the way I would go about doing it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to go kick somebody out of their house to go and help somebody in Texas? No.
Exactly. If you want to, I can contact my representative, Darren Guidry, and we can talk to somebody with FEMA. What answer you get at that level of management, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the committee here, but I would like to see us call them here for a meeting, let them explain to us, you know, where's the sense in this?
Okay. Let me try to arrange for the federal commissioner in Baton Rouge to come down here and give you guys a briefing on exactly what FEMA's position is on it. That's normally out of my wheelhouse, but if y'all want to do that, that's the recovery division's area. But if you want me to do that, I'll arrange it.
So I'm all in favor of that, and I don't know about the rest of them.
Okay,
Thank you, Rick.
we can do that.
Appreciate it, Rick.
All right.
Any, Mr. Dempsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick, also on the sandbagging operations, I know we've got your place, the 7th District, the old 7th District Fire Department, Lamar Dixon. We need to expand out a little bit further, you know, whenever the highways become, you know, closed and different things, trying to get it out to the different areas. Are you looking at anything else, staging areas?
Councilman Lambert, you talking about loose sand or filled sandbags?
Both.
Both, okay. We've got 7 locations with filled sandbags, and some of the locations has loose sand. If you want us to take a look at the loose sand portion of it, we can. So it's about 30,000 pre-filled bags at these locations in case we have a flash flood that the residents can immediately have access to. That's the reason that they're there. And they're trying to maintain these while we're not cutting grass in the wintertime. That grass cutting crew is helping us try to maintain that. But I'll get y'all around and take a look at it again and let me know which areas don't have loose sand, and if you want loose sand there, we'll be sure we get them there. Okay.
Mr. Kluwat?
Yeah, I got a couple things, Rick, on the whole report. Maybe the administration can answer the first thing. When is the auction? Are we using a third-party auction company? That's
We
what I
put
want.
out an RFP for the auction. It's going to be reviewed within the next week or so. With FEMA, their procurement practices, we're trying to make sure that we do everything properly before we move forward, that we got the right amount of quotes or follow their process so that we can be reimbursed.
Yes, and I think that they have some approved companies that they work with, you know, that other municipalities work with. Another question for you, Rick, is on the FEMA trailers. I think we beat up everybody. You know, I've called everybody in D.C. We've met on the state level. Restore's putting a lot of pressure on them. I'm with Bill Dawson. This is the first hurdle. You know, an event of this magnitude, we normally looking at the NFIP, and if it's 3 inches thick, we normally worked with about a ½ inch for 30 years or 40 years. Now we're working with at least 2 inches of that whole book. And this is one of the things that people thought they'd never have to face. But I agree with you. It's the political horsepower, and it's the pressure you put on them. I think we had one of our local Baton Rouge journalists that had put out an article, and I hadn't seen any rebuttal from FEMA yet to that article last weekend. And So they're not really looking to stay in any bad way.
Right.
All the meetings that we've had, we understand that they put a deadline on everything because they want people to work toward recovery. The scary thing is, the calls I've been getting in the last 2 weeks, that we got people that are getting scared out of their trailer. They're scared. They're going somewhere where they're living unsafe. They're having to go somewhere where it's totally unreasonable for them to live in that place and still try to come back and work at their home. I think FEMA should have learned a lesson back at Katrina when people were displaced, and that they need to be somewhere close to where they work, where they are trying to rebuild. So any news you get on that, we'd appreciate it. But I don't know who is. I know that everything else, when we agree to all the FEMA regulations or the NFIP regulations, that we're given the burden of enforcing those rules within our parish and our municipality.
And it's not like our residents aren't doing the best they can get out of the FEMA trail. At one point, we have over 400 trailers in the parish, and,
Right.
and we have a little over 200 now, so they're doing the best they can to rebuild their lives and get back in it. But it's going to take a lot more political horsepower than just myself pushing forward to get this done. So if y'all can assist with doing it, I'll bring in the people that we can talk to.
Yeah.
But this thing runs deep and wide all the way to D.C., so we're going to have to.
Well, we talked about a resolution in our last meeting about, going forward, and from this government, huh?
You making a, you
I would
making a
like to
motion?
propose a motion for a resolution going forward by this council, which on this committee, every council member sits, and have the administration join in, going forth to all of our state, our federal representatives, the President of the United States, and FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Association,
Good deal, okay.
asking them to please allow these folks to get their homes rebuilt and continue to live in a safe environment until that happens.
And we'll offer whatever assistance that we can in making that happen, so it's to pushing it through, so.
So I'd like
I
to
agree
add
with
to
you.
that, Randy, if I could, just then bring down the highest ranking FEMA official that we can find
Okay,
to meet with us as a group.
will do.
And I'll second.
So I have a motion and a second. Y'all get y'all resolution ready, and we'll bring it to the full council if anybody's got any objection. So move on that night.
And just comment on that, it's not necessarily to wait till the next meeting, but if we get a resolution together and pass it out, distribute it to the council and the administration, I'd like for legal to help us work on that, and that we will get the signatures, even if we got to get a courier to ride around and get our signatures.
We had talked about it last meeting, and we never had a regular meeting to do a resolution. Baton Rouge was told, and I got a call out of Baton Rouge, that they did a resolution, but basically all of FEMA told them was, this is the deadlines, and so they didn't say that it was going to be changed, but they thought it might be changed, but we can't wait on them. We got to try to help our people.
Well, we owe this to the people that we represent to go
Right. Let's move
move
forward
forward.
with
We
it.
got a deadline that's ringing in a week, and we're not going to have another meeting.
We'll
in a
put
week.
this together tomorrow and have a runner get with each one of you to sign, okay?
Yeah, I may be wrong, but I don't think you're gonna see FEMA police pushing anybody out of the trailer, so let's,
I don't think so either, sir, because I wake up every morning, I renew my faith in mankind, okay? That people are compassionate and have a heart.
But-
I tell you what, there's another thing that's glooming over us that comes in the 2-year mark based on the National Flood Insurance Program of the folks that have more than 50% damaged and didn't come into compliance by elevation.
all right.
That rebuilt and are living there. So we got another 6 months to figure out who's gonna put them people out of that house.
Guys,
I hate to rain on everybody's parade tonight, but that's coming. Thank you, sir.
thank you,
Any more questions for Rick? Rick, I appreciate the update, and
thank you, appreciate it.
very good. We're gonna move on to number 6, 2018-2019 property and casualty insurance renewal proposal review. Mr. Harry and Taylor Robert Insurance.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity. It's always a pleasure working with you. I forwarded everybody a copy of the proposal, I think, during the week, but just in case You don't have reference to it, I gave everybody another copy, so that should be in front of you. And the good news is that they don't have any bad news. See the table of contents, which is page 2. Page 3 will show you all the companies that we solicited. Some of the minor ones we didn't list, but 27 major companies we approached to see if we could improve our position with any of the coverage that we were carrying or the companies that we were carrying. Page 4 is just a recap, which shows the major differences in the values between 17 and what we're going to have on the renewal policy. Part of the increase was just because of the budget, and that's attributed mostly to the capital budget increase. This is kind of budget sensitive. And other than that, you can see the values that increased in the property and boiler machinery, contractors' equipment, automobile schedule, and just the other minor type of coverage that we provide in the package program. All those are listed individually. Page 5 just gives you a recap of the coverages through the years compared to the coverages that we have as a proposal for this upcoming year. You can go down each one of them and give you a separate price and the premium for the automobile, general liability, public officials liability, employee benefits, employee-related practices, crime, boiler machinery, property, and mobile equipment. And you'll see that the total of that pricing is $751 compared to $692 last year. So overall, you know, we had an increase of a little bit less than $60,000, which is attributed to increase in value in most of the products. The workman's comp is a second year of a 2-year policy, so that premium remains the same. And the terrorism has a slight increase. The service cost for the TPA, which is resolution services, and the agent services remains the same and have been the same for the last 15, 20, 30 years, something like that. So the annual cost, you know, this year is $896,781 as compared to $836,827 last year. I'd be happy to answer any questions on any portion of it.
Mr. Satterley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Harry, and welcome this evening. Looking on your, I guess it's page 4, where you discuss the major cost differences in the upper half, and public, I guess, can't see this, the bottom half property changes for 2017. It looks like you made a comment that our total premium increase was about $60,000. Just want to be sure I understand this.
Yeah.
It looks like we have insured 6 additional properties in terms of property
Right.
changes, and we've
Exactly.
deleted 6 others.
Right.
My first question is the ones in parentheses that are negative, which decreased in value, are those all losses due to the flood?
No, it's just values that, some of them because of flood.
Some of it's just depreciation or, okay?
Exactly, yeah. And what it does, it summarizes the pluses and the minuses and gives you a total increase in value.
Correct.
You know, for what we insure. as
And
a
that's my
whole.
second question. It's
Okay.
the total increased property value is a little over, is that $12 million?
Exactly.
And it looks to me like that's mostly due to 2 big-ticket items. One is the pump number 7, obviously, at Marvin Bro.
Correct.
And the other is the PUA in Deville.
In Deville.
5.1 and 6.5 million respectively. Simple math would show, you add those 2 together, it's almost the entire
That's
$12.1
it.
million dollars. Or said another way, does that mean if we bounce up to the top half, if $60,000 was our increase in premium for the property changes, approximately half of that is from the Parish Utilities of Ascension? And I'm asking this because we're going to have a utility meeting right after this, and these are the kind of numbers that we've been trying to get after for a long time.
$60,000 was the total increase,
Right,
including the casualty.
Right.
And everything else.
and probably about half of that, would you say, is
I'd
due
say
to,
right, for property, exactly.
well, of Parish Utilities of Ascension?
Half of the total value increase of $12,000 was probably, you know, 5,000.
Well, those are millions.
5,118,000.
Right.
For that, exactly.
Of the 12.1, so I would guess the
12.1.
premium's about almost half as well.
And what's that, exactly,
Or said another way, approximately 30,000 of the 60,000 increase was due to our sharing now of not people's, parish utilities of Ascension.
Utilities and the other one, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem.
Mr. Lawler.
Yes, sir, thank you. Regarding the TPA, administration portion of it, as far as workers' comp goes, where do we stand? Have we ever received any recovery from SIF fund?
Sure, every year, that's analyzed by the state, and then the state will give us the promulgation on it, and we'll go ahead and contribute, to whatever share we should be contribute to the second injury fund, and as far as any recovery that we're getting, And the TPA is the one that kind of oversees that and checks all those figures with us.
Do you know how much we're receiving?
I'm sorry?
Do you know how much we've received in SIF funds?
No, I can't recall that. I really can't. And then the next thing that we do is this is all, promulgated and checked by an actuarial, company, which is standard, every year that we have to do that. So they also check all the figures with us. They give us an outline, just to make sure that our figures, agree with theirs of the total dollars that we paid out both on just the small claims as well as the large claims, and make sure that we have enough in our upcoming year, loss fund to go ahead and supplement every type of claim that we might have. Okay.
Does the TPA of it go out for bid? I see that the amount hasn't changed.
No, it hadn't changed at all. It hadn't changed since we made the original contract with him. Now, he has a base price, and then, of course, after a certain amount, then he charged a little bit in case each one of these cases get a little bit more severe, and he has to spend more time on it. Yeah.
Okay. But, I mean, is there a reason that portion of it doesn't go out for a bid?
Nothing except that probably each one of these TPAs have to be certified by the particular company that's carrying them. They just don't let anybody, represent them. You have to have certain type of qualifications, then you have to apply, to be accepted. And then if you're accepted, then you're eligible to become a TPA for the particular companies.
I mean, that's something, I'd like to see go out for a bid at some point, because we're getting a great deal now.
Yep.
Or we're, for the price not to have changed for about 10 years, maybe we were getting it pretty bad before.
About 25 years.
25 years.
Our workload probably with the TPA and myself probably has tripled in that time, but the pricing is still just about the same.
Okay, that's something that we really need to look into. I mean,
Sure.
that should go out for a public bid. We've got a lot of TPA firms out there. We may be able to get a better deal on this.
Sure, sure.
I'd like to find out what recoveries we're having on the SIF fund each year and how we're doing on that.
I'll be happy to mail you a copy of our report if you want to.
Okay,
And
that'd be
then
great.
You can get that, and then you'll see exactly every detail that you could possibly want to know, ask about it. Everything's explained in that,
Okay,
in that
great.
analytical report is what I'm talking, actuary report.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Any more questions, Mr. Harry? See none, do we have a motion? Got a motion by Mr. John Cadmill, all right, Dempsey, discussion. Objections? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Harry.
Okay, so y'all giving me permission to go ahead and review
Yes.
the thing? Good, thank you, appreciate it, John.
It's gonna go to the full council for
Good,
final.
Ron, exactly, thank you.
Ascension Economic Development Corporation, quarterly briefing, Ms. Kate.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We came a little early for our quarterly report in the first quarter, so we'll have a little bit brief, but we'll tell you what we've done since the beginning of this year and what we anticipate completing by the end of this first quarter. So you have a summary of our prospect chart in front of you. We have 5 Class A projects. So these are the ones that are most likely to come to a final decision this year and the ones that we are in continuous contact with at the moment. And so we have one new one since our last briefing with you that we have added into the A, and then one that we moved to a B, just because they had some issues with their funding for their project startup, so it's going to be a little bit further delayed when they make that decision. So that is now in the B category. So the A's are pretty strong, representing over $2 billion of investment and over 200 potential new jobs. And then we have 5 B projects and 11 C projects. that are on our list. Also, we have the same goal as 2017 for our business retention. Actually, before I get to that, I forgot to mention, we did have one project win. It was unannounced really in the media. There was one media article about it. It was Veolia, and they did a $40 million investment at their facility here. They hired only 2 positions for that investment, but it was a significant investment for the continued productivity at their facility. So that was a great project for them, and we worked with them ahead of time trying to secure some of the quality jobs incentives from the state prior to the changes in that program that have been enacted. So that was a good win for us, even though it's a relatively small win compared to a lot of the other projects on our list. So wanted to mention that. We have the same goal in business retention and expansion for 2018 to meet with 50 companies locally. We have completed 2 and have 3 visits scheduled, and Lisa has promised me that we'll make it to 10 by the end of this quarter. So we're well on the way for that. And then what we mentioned at our end of the year report was we wanted to give you more information on kind of how we get our project leads and what we submit on and what we don't. So far this year, we have received 6 from Louisiana Economic Development and the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. 5 of those, we did not have sites that fit the requirements for those project descriptions, and we did submit on 1 of those requests. And then we also had a meeting with a real estate developer that put us in contact with a potential company that was looking at this region and Houston. And so now we have a new project that came from that meeting at our office. So we have a total of 7 that we've had this year so far, as far as interest in looking at our parish. We are continuing our work with the Riverplex Mega Park, trying to position ourselves to really make that forefront for our future. We have set a goal to get a website specific to the site up and running. We have met with a marketing firm, and we anticipate having a visual to share and potentially be underway in March. So we'll be showing that with our board and then working through that process. Additionally, we continue to work with our stakeholders and allies. So we have met with the parish president once this year, and we have one scheduled upcoming. So we do monthly briefings with President Matassa, and then we have our quarterly report happening today. So additionally, we will be on the Economic Development Strategies panel at the LMA conference that's upcoming. We are also going to be a participant on the panel at the Statewide Economic Development Summit. So this is it's an ITEP panel for economic developers to look at case studies and figure out maybe what went right and what went wrong, and kind of try and figure out how we're going to navigate the ITEP process. We'll also be going to the ICSC Gulf South Idea Exchange, which is focused on retail development. So we will have a presence there, we'll have a table, and we'll also have meetings with developers. We'll be attending the Ascension Chamber banquet hopefully tonight, and the Donaldsonville Chamber banquet also. And then we're still working on our newsletter, so we'll have the end of the year newsletter out. We're anticipating in February. A big item still is our industrial tax exemption program. So we are still working on what this local process is going to look like. So we are working under that project by project case basis now. We would like to streamline the process as much as we can, but it is still rapidly evolving and changing. So we're just going to keep you up to date as we continue through this, navigating the ITEP. I will tell you that it is the major decision factor to get projects across the line, and it has been, I guess, the most impactful state program that we've had and that we have in our toolkit. So we are very sensitive about it, and we really want to be responsible with it. So we spend a significant amount of our time working on it. So if you have any questions, we're happy to continue working with you on that.
Yeah, Kate. Thank y'all very much, both of you guys. I got, based on ITEP, I got 2 questions.
Okay.
One is basically an opinion. Since we've had all the exposed publicity on the transparency of the true name of the applicants and stuff like that, are we changing our strategy, and how is industry the developers coming in and the local ones expanding? Are they finding some way within themselves and working with economic development, both Louisiana Economic Development and Ascension Parish Economic Development to work through that one single item?
It's a great question. So we leave it up to the project realistically on what approach they would like to take, if they need to maintain confidentiality or if they are possible to go through the project process as their company name. Louisiana Economic Development has a big issue with them going through as their company if they are seeking the discretionary incentives. So if they are, then they have to remain competitive until the end of the process when LED has to be the first to announce their project location. Okay. So there's a little bit of sensitivity regarding how that works when they get their initial offer letter from the state. It's actually written in there that they are not allowed to reveal who they are or anything about their project. So that's a challenge that we face, and then some companies have restrictions about being able to reveal who they are based on other locations that may or may not be staying in business, and investor relations. So we leave it up to the company that comes to us on how they would like to proceed, and then we have to figure out internally how we can best get that project information in front of all the decision makers.
Yeah, so I just want to clear that up, that Louisiana Economic Development is also
heavily involved in how we handle that.
Involved in how we handle it on a local level, but they're also heavily involved in just, of the whole nature of keeping things under wrap while everybody's competing. And so, we're not only faced on a local level with the legal issue, but with an ethical issue and, moral good judgment and transparency. So anytime you can throw us a bone on, where that wind is blowing, we would appreciate it. We know that we sign confidentiality agreements and based on contract negotiations all the time, and that's no more than what that is. And
right.
It's a deal between the state and local government and an industrial partner. I got my second, thank you very much. It was a good answer. My second question, on the ITEP program, I think each council member and administration has just received the letter from the Ascension Parish Assessor's Office, Assessor Smiley's office, and I think you've got it too. So can you give us the gist of that letter and what it all means to us?
All right, so the letter, a brief summary, I guess, of the relevant section is that the assessor's office feels that it is illegal for the parish council to exempt the millage for the assessor through the ITEP process, which is what they are going to the governor with. So at this time, according to the governor's executive order and according to the rules that go with that executive order, there is no statement about the assessor's millage. There's nothing that entails what they're requesting. So today, we have to walk through the process with what the executive order states and the rules that come with it. Should they continue with their letter and their legal argument, that's something they're going to have to work out with the governor's office. And the governor's office has said that they are looking at making revisions to the ITEP program based on the feedback that they have been receiving throughout this challenging process. So I don't know where that's going to go, but we can't factor that into our decision-making process today because it is not technically part of the process.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that might be a question for Mr. Barrett. Is it illegal, or does somebody think it's illegal? And is there an opinion, a state or federal opinion based on that? Mr. Perry,
we're following the executive order. That's the law today.
Okay. It just came up. That's why I'm asking.
Right.
I thought you guys had
the letter made it sound like they're challenging it legally, so I guess we'll just wait and see what comes out of that. But as of what we can do, essentially, they're not part of that process today.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. That's all I got.
Satterley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kate, as a follow-up to Mr. Kluat's question, have we lost anyone so far with this new AED policy to allow companies to hide or not hide their true identity from the get-go, or is it just too early to tell?
I would say it's too early to tell. We are really in the early stages for those A projects, talking about the ITEP process to go through that. So I'm anticipating that we will have one coming up soon that will make that decision on how they want to handle it. But really, there's only been a few instances where we've had this discussion.
And I think I know your stance on this, but do you feel personal angst about having to do it this way?
I don't know if I have personal angst. I think it's difficult for us to help navigate the waters with a project when we don't know what we can tell them up front. So essentially what we tell them is, you know, we're going to go to our board with your project specifics. If they think it's a quality project to move along, then we'll move to the next phase, which is basically a 6-week process of 2 meetings per body and then a meeting with the sheriff. And it's turned into actually multiple meetings. So it's very challenging, and we have to do things very early now. So before, they used to wait till they were ready to make a decision, and then they went through the process. Now they have to go through before they can even get to that final investment decision, just to factor that they will or won't receive that incentive, because a lot of times that's a hole on a spreadsheet, and that may be the deciding factor of that final location. So we're trying to get there as early as possible, but still maintaining that confidentiality is a challenge to figure out how we can make that flow with their decision timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions? Thank you, Kate, for your update.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll move on to number 8, opioid litigation resolution to issue RFQ for a law firm to handle this lawsuit. Mr. Bill Dawes.
Yeah. Thank you. It's kind of in response to a lot of requests that we've had from different law firms to represent us in this matter. So what you have is what's called a nationwide crisis on opioid addiction, and what the costs are to municipalities and states. So, you know, I have just a few figures. I'm not going to bore you with all these. They were attached on Novus if you wanted to look at it. But recently, in November 2007, the President's Council on Economic Advisors said that these costs had been severely underestimated in the past, and the total economic cost of the opioid crisis for 2015 was over $500 billion, billion with a B. Over 50,000 people in the U.S. died of drug overdose in 2015, and the number of deaths have doubled in the past 10 years. Healthcare costs were estimated at $78 billion in 2013. And so if you looked at that cost increase for Ascension and you applied a per capita, the same one that they used, then it would be about $20 million for Ascension Parish in 2015. There are about 250 cities and counties and states that sued opioid makers, wholesalers, and distributors last year. Bloomberg has reported that Purdue Pharma, whose drug OxyContin started the epidemic, is proposing a global settlement. The costs include EMS services, mental health, the judicial system, law enforcement, child services, and rehabilitation. You know, these are just some examples, and so what we're asking here is that this committee look at and see and give us permission to go out for an RFQ to get law firms to propose on this, representing us in this matter.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I make that motion there.
Okay.
To move forward with that RFQ.
Motion by Mr. Oliver Joseph.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Lawler. Any discussion? Any objection? Move that to the full council. Number 9, amendment number 1 to the master contract for professional services for geotechnical testing between APS Design and Testing LLC and Ascension Parish Government, extending the contract term for an additional year through April 12, 2019. Total budget allowance for a term of contract is not to exceed the amount of $300,000. That is to be shared among 3 firms. Ms. Tacey?
Yes, sir. Good evening. This is to amend their 3 of the consultants' contracts. They were selected last year. We have them on retainer, and they have a yearly budget of $300,000. So this one and the next two items that you have on your agenda is to renew their contract.
All three, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Got a motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert, second by Mr. Cagnon Lottie. Any discussion? Any objection? So moved. We can move right on to number 10. It's pretty much the same.
Yes, sir. It's number 10 and number 11, it's just different consultant.
Do I hear a
So
motion?
moved.
Got a motion on, by Mr. Dempsey, second by Mr. Cagg. Any discussion? Objection? So move. And number 11.
Motion.
Got a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, second by Mr. Satterley. Any discussion? Any objection? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tayson. Amendment to professional service contract between Sharp Testing Service and Ascension Parish Government for Fire District Number 1 for an increase in the contract amount of $500 for additional hose testing and ground ladder testing procedures for the 2017 year and total contract amount not to exceed $13,500.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Cluett, second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any discussion? Any objection? So move. Renewal of a contract with Southland Fire and Safety Equipment for inspection, calibration, and necessary repairs to instruments, valves, nozzles, fire extinguishers, breathing cylinders, fire helmets, and other various equipment. Total compensation not to exceed $18,000.
Motion.
Got a motion by Mr. Cluett, second by Mr. Dempsey Lambert. Any discussion, any objection? So move. Amendment to professional service contract between Sterilicide Cycle Environmental Solution, Inc., for an increase in the contract amount of $49,900 for the event scheduled on April 14th, 2018. The total amount of the contract will be not to exceed amount of $99,800. Mr. Tommy Marshall, if anybody has any questions.
So move, Mr. Chairman, and it's a very good event.
Got a motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cluett. Any discussion? Any objection? So moved. Number 15, Ascension Clerk of Court Office request to increase purchase order number 76767 for Aqua Steam Systems, Inc., to $47,806. Ms. Joan Shivers.
All right. On Sunday, December 17th, the Clerk of Court Office located at 300 Homer Street, Donaldsonville, Louisiana, due to extreme rain, began taking on moisture inside the building, which caused a potential threat to sensitive documents contained within the building. Aqua Steam Systems was called out to dehumidify these documents. The Ascension Parish government is seeking approval to authorize the parish president to increase purchase order 76767 to $47,806 for this service.
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Joseph.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cluett. Any discussion? Any objection? Mr. Dempsey, got a question?
What are we doing with the important documents? Or did we save all of the documents, or what do we do?
Yes, we brought them into the building across the street, which is the National Guard Armory, and it was leaking too, so that's a roof to be changed. But anyway, yeah, everything to my knowledge was saved and nothing was lost.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any more discussion? Mr. Saddle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question would go to you, Mr. Matassa. I'm not sure who, but is there any thought of maybe digitizing these records instead of worrying about them getting wet and mildewed?
She's in the process of that, but she also said that she needs to keep all the hard copies. We got a ton of them. I mean, I think she's doing away with what she can. I don't know what the laws are with the clerk of court.
These are the original documents. They have to be kept.
So we have, I was going to ask you, O'Neill, so we have to keep these by
These are
state
the
law?
documents,
Or
yes,
yeah.
this is the
There's
original
a ton of
documents in
them.
the clerk's office.
Travis knows.
So the only advantage of digitizing would be a redundant copy, and
You can use them in different places, but they've got to keep the original records.
it's sort of interesting because keeping something after it mildews and is unreadable is not worth keeping.
Well, that's why
anymore.
that's why they got it immediately.
I hear you. Thank you all.
Any more discussion? We had a motion and a second. No objections? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me one second.
President.
Garrett Graves' office said that everyone that has a trailer to please call his office, and they're noting everything and taking out, everybody that, that needs to stay in the trailers, and he's gonna be fighting for them. But he needs them to call his office and to, give their statement. And his number is 202-225-3901. And we will put this on Channel 21 tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, could we also add that to the website?
Sure, sure.
Thank you, Parish President.
That's impressive.
Good news. We'll move on to monthly contract reports, Ms. Sandra.
Good evening. You have before you a copy of the contract reports that were entered into, the contracts entered into in the month of January.
Give you guys a little time to look over them, and if you have any questions for Ms. Sandra.
I just have one question. Item 1, under the renewals for the parish, River Parish Security. It says each per fee schedule not to exceed 32,000. Is that for each, or is that for all of those?
That would be all of them together.
Not to exceed 30.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Appreciate it, Ms. Sandra.
Thank you.
Budget amendment number 1, approval to introduce ordinance to amend 2018 budget. Ms. Dawn.
Good evening. You have before you the ordinance for budget amendment number 1, which reads as follows. An ordinance to amend the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2018 operating and capital budgets for the Parish of Ascension, adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on the 30th day of November 2017. Section 1. The Ascension Parish Council hereby ordains that the ordinance approving, adopting, and appropriating the 2018 operating and capital budgets for the Parish of Ascension is hereby amended, approved, and appropriated as follows. The operating budget, general fund, revenues, grant EPA Lake Pontchartrain, $47,000. Expenditures, building department, acquisitions, vehicles, and equipment. This was originally in the 2017 budget, however, it was not expended, and the amount is $80,000. Planning and zoning, professional services for the Comprehensive Master Land Use Plan contract with CPEX. This also was originally in the 2017 budget, however, it was not expended, and that is for $450,000. Appropriations and grants, EPA Lake Pontchartrain Phase 2, $49,500. ACUD number 1, expenditures, acquisitions, buildings and land, purchase of sewer plant for St. Jude subdivision from Utilities, Inc. This was originally in the 2017 budget, was not expended, and it's for $250,000. Capital projects, infrastructure projects, expenditures, engineering, Highway 3127 project, $450,000.
Any questions?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion by Mr. Cagney.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Lawler. Any discussion? Mr. Joseph?
3127, what is that? I mean, what is that for? That 450?
There's $750,000 in the budget initially for the engineering cost.
That's,
Okay.
okay, in the
You understand
conversation.
now.
All right,
Okay.
all right. We good.
You good?
I'm good.
All right. All right. Any more discussion?
Yeah, real quick.
Mr. Kluwat.
I'm with Mr. Joseph. The 450,000 is, what are we getting for that? I can't hear you.
See
It's, go ahead.
That's from that CF money, but it's for the engineering and surveying and stuff for that road.
Okay, thank you.
Any objections? So moved. We'll move on to the sales and use tax report. Ms. Gwen?
Good evening. You have before you your regular sales and use tax report. This will be the last report for 2017. 2017 was probably the largest collection year for East Ascension Drainage for the last 10 years, and therefore probably since the inception of their sales tax, which was approved by the voters in 1984. The 1 cent was almost 100%, but just a couple of percents less than 1 point something percent below. Their first election was in 1969. Their first month's collection, or our first month's collection, was $25,067, compared to today close to $2 million a month. It became a district in 1985. It was created we created a sales tax district, and January 1st, 1987 became effective, and the tax is perpetual. The largest collection year for sales tax district number 1 was also 2016 at $27,274,660. Same with the half-cent sales tax. Its largest collection year was also 2016, $13,303,578. So I thought I'd give you all a little history.
Good deal. Any questions for Ms. Gwen? Appreciate it, Ms. Gwen. And I think y'all just won an award, right? Could you tell us about y'all award, I think, the Finance Department?
Yes. I'm proud to say that our department won for the 9th straight year the national award from GFOA, Governmental Finance Accounting Office, and for complying with all the generally accepted accounting procedures mandated by GASB. And it was for our financial statements for the year 2017.
Great. Good
and
job.
I'd also like to say, thank
Outstanding.
you. And we always have our team leader for the finance award, which was Amanda Barat, and then for the budget award, it's always Dawn Caballera.
Good team.
They do a great job with their staffs.
Great. With that, we'll move on to our revenue and expenditure reports. Ms. Amanda?
Good evening. Before you are the financial reports for the month of December 2017. Please note, this report is not a final report at this time. We're still making accruals and adjusting entries on the books. The year will not be closed to probably the end of February, beginning of March. So this is not the final report. We have several entries that still have to be added to this report. Page 1, revenues are currently at 84.21%. Page 2, expenditures are at 76.54% at 100% of the year. Page 3 are the charts that compare the year-to-date operating and capital to the budget. Page 5 gives you an explanation of the funds that are highlighted on page 1 and 2 that are under the budget for revenues or over the budget for expenditures by 5% or more. And the last page reflects checks issued in December over 100,000, and the total of the checks were $1,251,564.40. Once you review the report, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And when we do close out the year, we will bring you a final unaudited December report just for y'all records.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Amanda at this time? Mr. Saddle?
Yeah, Amanda, could you just take one example, and one I'd like to see, again, we have a utilities meeting shortly, would be the Parish Utilities of Ascension on the first and the second pages, where you talk about the, I guess the first one is revenue transfers in, and the second one is expenditures. And tell me what the meaning behind, I guess we don't have to go over all the numbers, but the payoff numbers of 94% in the case of the former and 104% in the case of the latter. How do I interpret that? I mean, can I use that as a committee member and any member of utilities in any way to to determine what the cost of services it was for the full year to run the PUA? Or am I looking at something I don't need to
Well,
be
you're-
looking at?
The budget figure for revenues is $1,741,000 for parish utilities. Your total, year-to-date is $1,589,960. You're at 91.32% of the year, of the budget. We still have quite a few entries that have to be added to the budget, so it's not the final figure. It probably will go up more than that, closer to 100% of what your budget is for revenues. And on the expenditure side, your budget is $1,689,500. Your total expenses with encumbrances, we'll back out encumbrances that will not be carried over to next year. Mostly for annual purchase orders. If the money is not spent, they will be closed out and not rolled over to next year. So that figure will be reduced, which will probably put you more in line at 100% of the budget.
So is the PUA operating how we budgeted it, within budget, and after we make
Yes.
these last adjustments and so forth, and is not in any significant way operating in the red, or? What all goes, when you talk about revenues in, what all goes into that number? Is that the customers and what they're paying and? Where do you guys in finance get these numbers?
From the budget comes from the department manager gives us the budget figures for that department.
So the actual revenues are reflected in there from the department managers? Mr. Joseph is shaking his head no.
No.
It's on the budget. It's strictly on the budget right now, if I'm not mistaken. We strictly just, these numbers are strictly based on what is allocated in the budget and what is in and take.
Compared to the actual, right.
Right.
And the revenue that is the majority of the revenue are billings for water. There may be some other fees in there for reconnect fees and things like that, but the majority of it is for the collection of water.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, we'll move on to number 20, bid items to accept lowest responsive bid as follows. Ms. Jones?
Thank you. On January 10th, 2018, the purchasing department received 2 proposals for the Lamar Dixon Expo Center concession operations. After review, the non-engineering selection committee recommends accepting the proposal submitted by Big Events and to authorize the parish president to begin contract negotiations for this service.
Got a motion by
Someone-
Mr. Dempsey, second by Mr. Satterley. Any discussion? Any objections? So move. We move on to number 21, executive session, DOTD versus Ascension Parish expropriation. Mr. Kluwak?
Move to go into executive.
Motion by Mr. Kluwak, second by Mr. Joseph. Roll call.
Councilman Joseph?
Yes.
Councilman Dawson?
He is.
Councilman Turner?
He had to leave too.
Councilman Satterley?
Yes.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Kluwat?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnalotti?
Yes.
Yes. Motion to go into executive session.
My wife said, get a bottle of wine.
I get a motion to reconvene?
Motion.
Had a motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Kluwat. Any objections?
None.
Good. So move. All we had was an update on the roundabout at 70 and
22.
LA 22. Just an update. We'll move on to number 22.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr.
Second.
Cagnalotti, second by Mr. Lawler.
Yes, sir.
No objections?
No, sir.
So move. Good night and be safe.